An American tourist demanded to speak to the manager at a Sydney cafe because the barista called him mate. He said it was unprofessional and diminished his status as a customer. He insisted he be addressed as sir or by his full name, which was Bradley. When the manager came out and also called him mate, he accused them of coordinating a targeted harassment campaign. He left a one-star review saying Australians have a superiority complex disguised as friendliness. This is exactly the kind of cross-cultural meltdown I track full-time, because most people only see the surface, not the psychology underneath. If you want the deeper analysis others scroll past, you belong here. Subscribe before the next one drops. A woman from California complained that her Airbnb host was too honest about the apartment. She said being told the shower pressure was weak and the street noise was loud before arrival constituted false advertising because it made her expectations too low. She claimed this caused her to enjoy the stay less than she would have if she'd discovered the flaws herself. She demanded a 50% refund for emotional damage from accurate information. She called it pre-disappointment syndrome. An American exchange student reported his professor for bullying because she called his essay a bit rubbish. He filed an official complaint saying the word rubbish was verbally abusive. He brought a printed definition of constructive criticism from an American university website. When the dean explained that Australians are direct, he said directness without positive reinforcement first is culturally insensitive. He requested all future feedback be delivered in a compliment sandwich format, or he'd involve his parents' lawyer. Tourist in Melbourne asked a local for directions and got upset when the guy said he had no idea, mate. She said in America, people would at least pretend to know and point somewhere. She insisted he pull out his phone and Google it for her. When he said she could Google it herself, she accused him of lacking hospitality culture. She posted on TikTok that Australians are mean because they won't lie to make you feel better. She called it honesty aggression. Most viewers laugh at stories like this. My subscribers study them. They get that every culture runs on invisible social rules, and understanding those gives you real-world advantage. If that clicks with you, hit subscribe. You're exactly my kind of audience. A man visiting Brisbane complained to hotel staff that Australians don't smile enough in customer service. He said the lack of performative happiness was affecting his vacation experience. He brought printed articles about American service culture to show them the correct way. When the receptionist said they were being perfectly pleasant, he said pleasant isn't enough and that he needed enthusiastic. He requested they attend a workshop on emotional labor. He tipped $0 and wrote that amount on the receipt as a teaching moment. An American woman got angry at a Gold Coast restaurant because the waiter didn't introduce himself or ask how her day was going. She said the absence of personal connection made her feel like a transaction, not a person. She demanded he come back and redo the greeting with more warmth. When he said his name was Dave and brought her food, she gave him a lecture about the importance of building rapport. She left a note on the bill explaining that tips are earned through personality. Dave told her tips aren't expected in Australia. A tourist asked an Australian where the best place to watch the sunset was and got told it depends on what you're into. He said this answer was passive-aggressive because it put the burden back on him. He demanded a definitive answer with no follow-up questions. When the Australian said maybe the beach, he accused him of being unhelpful on purpose. He posted that Australians weaponize casualness to make tourists feel stupid. He called it conversational gaslighting. A woman from Texas complained that her tour guide in Sydney didn't sugarcoat that the climb would be tiring. She said hearing it's a decent trek before starting ruined her motivation. She insisted tour guides should always be encouraging, regardless of reality. When she got tired halfway up, she blamed the guide for manifestation-based exhaustion. She said being told something is hard makes it harder through neurological priming. She demanded a refund for psychological sabotage. She was perfectly capable of finishing the climb. An American couple reported their Uber driver for emotional coldness because he didn't ask about their day. They said the quiet ride gave them anxiety about whether they'd done something wrong. They insisted drivers should maintain conversation to prevent passenger discomfort. When the driver said he thought they might want a quiet ride, they said assuming is worse than talking. They gave him 1 star for failing to intuit their needs. They wrote that Australian drivers lack emotional intelligence training. A man in Perth got upset when a cashier told him the shirt he was buying was overpriced for what it was. He said her opinion was inappropriate and salespeople should encourage purchases. She said she was just being honest because she wouldn't buy it herself. He accused her of sabotaging the business and demanded to speak to her manager. The manager said she was probably right about the price. He bought it anyway to prove a point and returned it the next day, saying it was poorly made. An American student complained that her Australian roommate told her she chewed loudly. She said this observation was a microaggression because it drew attention to an unconscious behavior. She insisted that in America, roommates would either say nothing or leave a passive-aggressive note. When her roommate said she'd rather just mention it than be annoyed silently, she accused her of conflict-seeking behavior. She requested a room transfer for incompatible communication styles. She called it cultural harassment through excessive honesty. A tourist in Tasmania asked a local if the town was worth visiting and got told it's all right if you like that sort of thing. He demanded to know what that meant because he found it evasive. When the locals said quiet towns aren't everyone's thing, he accused him of being elitist about preferences. He said in America, people would just say it's beautiful and let him decide. He posted that Australians give unhelpful answers to seem mysterious. He spent 2 hours there and said it was all right if you like that sort of thing. A woman got angry at a Sydney gym because the trainer told her she was doing an exercise wrong. She said being corrected in front of others was humiliating. She insisted corrections be delivered privately in a gentler tone with affirmations first. When the trainer said she was just trying to prevent injury, she said the delivery matters more than the content. She demanded the trainer take a sensitivity course on body-positive coaching. She canceled her membership and wrote that Australian fitness culture is shame-based. She never got injured. An American complained that his Australian co-worker said his presentation was fine but could use work. He said fine is coded language for terrible and could use work is passive aggression. He requested an HR meeting to discuss hostile communication patterns. When HR said the feedback was constructive, he brought printed screenshots of American workplace communication guides. He said, Australian directness creates toxic work environments for people used to diplomatic phrasing. He called it bluntness-based bullying. His presentation did need work. A tourist asked a Melbourne local what the best coffee shop was and got told they're all pretty good. She said this answer was deliberately unhelpful because it provided no actionable information. She demanded he rank his top 3 with detailed explanations. When he said he genuinely thought they were all decent, she accused him of being difficult. She said Americans understand that best means most popular, not subjective quality. She found a cafe, and it was pretty good. A man visiting Adelaide complained to his hotel concierge that Australians don't apologize enough. He counted 7 interactions where no one said sorry for minor inconveniences that weren't their fault. He said this lack of reflexive apologizing made him feel unvalued. He brought a comparison chart of apology frequency between American and Australian service workers. When the concierge said they only apologize when something is actually wrong, he said that's exactly the problem. He called it empathy deficiency disorder. An American woman got upset at a Gold Coast salon because the hairdresser asked if she was sure about the cut she wanted. She said questioning her choice was condescending. When the hairdresser explained that style wouldn't work with her hair type, she said her opinion wasn't requested. She insisted on the cut anyway, and it looked terrible. She came back, demanding it be fixed for free because the hairdresser should have refused to do it. She said she was a visual decision-maker, not a technical one, so expert warnings don't register. She called it Outcome-based discrimination. A tourist in Cairns asked a shopkeeper where to find authentic Australian souvenirs and was told most of it is made in China. He said this honesty ruined his shopping experience because he wanted to believe in the authenticity. He insisted she should have let him buy things without mentioning manufacturing origins. When she showed him locally made items that cost more, he said they should be the same price as the fake ones. He bought the Chinese-made souvenirs and told himself they were real. He called her truth-bombing without consent. An American student reported his Australian professor for giving him a C without explaining how to improve it to an A. The professor had written 3 paragraphs of specific feedback. He said the feedback was too blunt and didn't include encouragement about his potential. He brought his parents on a Zoom call to discuss grade inflation differences. When the professor said a C meant average work, he said average is a triggering word in American education. He demanded a grade amendment for cultural insensitivity. He got the same CA woman visiting Sydney complained that a local told her she had something in her teeth. She said this public announcement of a flaw was mortifying. She insisted that in America, people either say nothing or discreetly text a mutual friend. When the local said she thought she'd want to know, she said wanting to know isn't the point. She posted that Australians lack social grace and embarrass people under the guise of being helpful. She called it shame-based altruism. She had spinach in her teeth for the rest of the day in her photos. An American complained his Brisbane Airbnb host told him the neighborhood was a bit dodgy at night. He said this warning was discriminatory against the area and made him paranoid. He insisted hosts should emphasize positive aspects only. When he asked where to walk at night, the host suggested well-lit streets. He accused her of fear-mongering for suggesting certain routes over others. He walked through the dodgy area to prove a point, and his phone got stolen. He said the host manifested the theft by mentioning it could happen. A tourist got angry when an Australian asked if he was American within 30 seconds of meeting. He said this was stereotyping based on his appearance and accent. When asked how the Australian was supposed to know, he said, "You don't ask, you wait to be told." He insisted that in America, people never assume someone's nationality out loud. He demanded an apology for the microaggression of accurate observation. He wore a shirt that said Texas and spoke with a thick Dallas accent. He called it prejudice through pattern recognition. A woman from Florida complained that her Australian Tinder date told her on the first date that he wasn't feeling a connection. She said this honesty was cruel because people should always give it a few dates before deciding. She insisted he should have ghosted her like a normal person rather than delivering direct rejection. When he said he thought being upfront was more respectful, she said respect is letting someone preserve their dignity through ambiguity. She posted that Australian dating culture is brutally honest to the point of emotional violence. She called it relationship transparency trauma. If you've made it this far, you already think differently from most viewers. I break down these cultural collisions every week so you can spot the psychology behind them before everyone else does. Subscribing doesn't help me. It keeps you ahead of the curve. An American tourist in Melbourne asked a bartender how the food was and got told it's pub food, nothing special. He said this underselling was bad business practice. He insisted the bartender should have described it enthusiastically regardless of quality. When the bartender said he'd rather be honest than have disappointed customers, he said disappointment is part of the experience economy. He ordered it anyway and it was fine. He left a review saying the food exceeded the bartender's negative description. He called it anti-marketing honesty syndrome.